بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله الطيبين الطاهرين وصحبه المنتجبين. All praise to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. May He send all His blessings and mercy upon the Prophet of Islam and upon His chosen progeny, the people of the household. Sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. After seeing the presentation and the initiative of the youth of the Dar, it fills my heart with joy and happiness and pride how the community in Leeds, alhamdulillah, is progressing in the right direction, seeking knowledge from the best source, Ahlul-Bayt alayhim, in the language that you understand, at the times that suit you, and trying to find solutions and answers to questions and challenges that face you, members of the British society, the Muslim community in the British society. So alhamdulillah, and I hope today's talk followed by the Q&A, which I hope you will have lots of questions and points to discuss. I hope it will just add another step to your journey in the right direction, inshallah. So these days we are remembering the day of Mubahila, the occasion the day on which the Prophet of Islam was ordered by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala after a long debate and discussion with the people of Najran, which was a town near Medina, the capital of the Muslim state at the time. The people of Najran were Christians. With the Prophet ﷺ, they had long debates about the divine guidance and who represents the divine guidance. Is it the followers of Christ at the time, the people of Najran, or is it the Prophet of Islam sallallahu alaihi wasallam? Will they accept his call? Will they follow him or not? After a long debate and discussion, the Prophet was ordered to call them for a challenge, and that challenge was to bring forward the people of Najran and the people of the Prophet to meet publicly, and as a last resort, following the long discussion and debates, to pray to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, since both parties worshipped Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and they believed in one God, to pray to God to curse the party which is rejecting the truth. You debate and debate and debate, and then you reach a stage in which you are publicly, your two camps, and then you come out publicly and you ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the one Lord, which is worshipped by both parties, and both parties claim divine guidance, to curse the side which is rejecting the truth. And on that day, the Prophet of Islam brought no one but Fatima, salamullahi alayha, Imam al-Hassen, Imam al-Hussein himself, and Amir al-Mu'mineen Ali ibn Abi Talib alayhi salam. The order was quite clear from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala: bring forward your women, your children, and yourselves. He brought Fatima, al-Hasan al-Hussein himself, and Amir al-Mu'mineen alayhi salam. No one else. The people of Najran, of course, were on their way. They saw the group which was coming forward to meet them, and they were advised immediately by their chief not to go ahead with the public prayer, to call it off and pull back. It is yet another occasion on which AhlulBayt salamullahi alayhim are brought forward to the scene as not just people who lived around the Prophet, who took from the Prophet guidance equal to everybody else. It is yet another occasion in which Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has planned for them to have a unique position. We don't view Ali ibn Abi Talib or Fatima al-Zahra merely as people who just lived around the Prophet and they took from his guidance and from his blessings what was equal to everybody else. That is not the way we view them. We view them as true and unique and the only perfect inheritors of his knowledge and his guidance. People might say, which is my first point in the talk today, why do you still talk about this? Why do you still bring up issues and occasions in which AhlulBayt alayhim salam were brought forward as a unique group of people? Why do you always bring up stories in which the Muslims, the Shia Muslims and the Sunni Muslims, have debates about them? Why do you continue to talk about this? Surely you have other things to talk about, more important than history and indeed points of debates in history. Some might say we are tired of bringing up this Shia-Sunni debate every single time we attend the mosque. We should really concentrate on common points, and indeed these things might be dividing the Muslim Ummah. For me to say that Fatima al-Zahra alayhi salam was the only woman brought forward with the Prophet and no one else, none of the wives of the Prophet, and you know that he had several of them in Medina. I say that the Prophet brought himself and Ali ibn Abi Talib, which is giving Ali ibn Abi Talib a unique status, and indeed he did not bring forward any of the other companion or other men around him. So why do we keep talking about this again and again and again? Well, if you view the issue of AhlulBayt alayhim salam and the status of AhlulBayt alayhim salam as history, then of course you have a valid point. And we should really stop talking about this, and then we should just concentrate on the present and plan for the future. But this is actually a common mistake. The issue of AhlulBayt alayhim salam is not a historical issue. I tried to be specific in the words I chose for them, and I said that we view AhlulBayt alayhim salam as the only perfect, divinely appointed inheritors of the knowledge of the prophets. I repeat, we view AhlulBayt alayhim salam as the only divinely appointed perfect inheritors of the Prophet's Sunnah. So the issue of AhlulBayt alayhim salam is not a historical issue. It's not only about who should have been the ruler after the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Indeed, that's a point to be discussed. Who should have been the ruler after the Prophet? But until today, November 2012, every single Muslim should be looking at the Sunnah of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam and should be asking himself and herself, how best can I follow the model of the Prophet? How best can I seek the knowledge, the true, authentic knowledge about the Prophet his words, actions, approvals and disapprovals? That this should be a constant issue for every single one of us if we want to reach, the slide is not there anymore, that goal that the youth of the Dar set to themselves, to be true practicing Muslims, perfect human beings, aspiring to be perfect human beings as the Prophet ﷺ was. So if we have a constant question how best to follow the Prophet, how best to follow the teachings of the Prophet, then the issue of Ahlul Bayt becomes a living issue, a contemporary issue, rather than, oh, who should have been the ruler 14 centuries ago. And if you don't have that continuous quest within you, then you might fall into a few traps. And today I asked for an English copy of the Quran, which most of you have at home, and I will show you in a few minutes how not following Ahlul Bayt alayhi salam and not continuing to search for who should have been the true narrator of the Sunnah of the Prophet alayhi salam can lead you to major problems. Today, November 2012, Leeds, Britain. If you think it's all history, you're making a big, big mistake. And I'll show you one example, just one simple example, which could lead into devastating results. Indeed, if you view Ahlul Bayt alayhi salam as history, then let's not talk about them anymore. But if you view them as, fine, this is the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. There's been several narrators of his Sunnah. There's been, there is a common area. There's a common ground between all Muslims, indeed. And we view all our respected brothers and sisters as Muslims. But there are some certain differences. Who should I follow? Who should I follow in details? Fine, so we all agree on the basics, on the foundations, on the principles. Is that enough? No. We need detailed answers. We need detailed guidance. To reach this set of guidance, who do I follow? Where do I take the Sunnah from? It's not all about the difference in whether you put your hands across or you put your hands down while performing salah. This is indeed a difference. But you can make a valid point by saying, what would be the impact if I put my hands up or put my hands down? If my intention was right. Maybe I got it wrong, but my intention was right. What would be the consequences? I will give you an example now. If you don't follow Ahlul Bayt alayhi salam in interpreting Al-Quran al-Kareem, in following the Sunnah of the Prophet, it will lead you to some disasters. أعوذ بالله من شر الشيطان اللعين الرجيم. Chapter 5, Surah Al-Ma'idah, the table, or sorry, the meal. Al-Ma'idah is the meal, not actual table. Named after the meal that Isa ibn Maryam, Jesus peace and blessings be upon him, and his mother, was asked by his disciples to bring down for them a sign from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that he is true, he is the true Isa that they knew, so he asked for food to be brought down. So not a table, food or meal. So Surah Al-Ma'idah chapter 5, verse 51. This is an English translation of the Quran, which is printed and reprinted in millions of copies and spread around across the Western world, teaching Muslims and non-Muslims about Islam. This is indeed a living example of how not following Ahlul Bayt alayhi salam will lead you to major disaster. Verse 51. أعوذ بالله من شر الشيطان اللعين الرجيم. يا أيها الذين آمنوا لا تتخذوا اليهود والنصارى أولياء بعضهم أولياء بعض ومن يتولهم منكم فإنه منهم إِنَّ اللَّهَ لَا يَهْدِي الْقَوْمَ الظَّالِمِينَ. Before I recite the translation, which is not taken from AhlulBayt alayhi salam, the topic of the verse is the relationship between the Muslims and the people of the book, the Jews and the Christians. It says, O you who believe, do not take the Jews and the Christians for friends. How many of you have read this English translation? 2? 3? You all read Arabic? Quran? How many of us could read Arabic? Quran? About 10. Okay. Alhamdulillah. Should be more, inshallah, in the Dar, and I'm sure the youth of the Dar will have circles to teach in Arabic, inshallah. Because Arabic is the Quran, not the English, because this is not the Quran. O you who believe, do not take the Jews and Christians for friends. They are friends of each other. And whoever amongst you takes them for a friend, then surely he is one of them. Surely Allah does not guide the unjust people. So, I ask you, fellow brothers and sisters, Sunnis and Shias, your Quran says, apparently, in this English translation, do not take the Jews and the Christians for friends. How many of you have Christian friends? Okay, so most of us have Christian friends. So what, we're not applying the Quran? 3% of the population of the UK are Muslims according to 2001 census. 2011, I haven't seen the results yet. So if the 3% Muslims in the UK followed this, and if the 5 million Muslims in France followed this, and if the several millions in America followed this, what do you think the impact would be? Do not take the Jews and the Christians as friends, apparently, according to this English translation of the Quran, brothers and sisters. Indeed, this is just a simple example of how not following Ahlul-Bayt alayhi salam will lead you to disasters. Obviously, we do take the Jews and the Christians for friends, and we should. And in fact, we should do more than taking them for friends, because I'll recite to you another verse from the Quran. This translation translated the word awliya as friends. It said, the Quran says, Ya ayyuhalladhina amanu, do not take the Jews and the Christians as awliya. It did not say asdiqa, for those who understand Arabic. Asdiqa is friends. There's no other meaning to asdiqa. Awliya doesn't necessarily mean friends. But the translator chose specifically the word friends. Awliya, wali, has more than one meaning. One of the meanings of wali could be a companion or a friend. But why did the translator specifically, why did he choose the word friend here? How many of you think you know why he chose specifically the word friend? Does it ring a bell, the word wali? If I ask the followers of Ahlul-Bayt amongst you, what is the meaning of wali? Immediately, who comes to your mind? Only one man, that is Amir al-Mu'mineen Ali ibn Abi Talib salawatullahi wa sallam. Ali ibn Abi Talib is Waliyullah, and it doesn't mean the friend of Allah. Brothers and sisters, the translator here specifically chose the word friend as a translation of awliya, because later on in the same chapter, in verse 55, it says clearly, أعوذ بالله من شر الشيطان اللعين الرجيم إنما وليكم الله ورسوله والذين آمنوا الذين يقيمون الصلاة ويؤتون الزكاة وهم راكعون. Surely your wali is Allah, the messenger, and the believers who perform prayer and give charity whilst at the position of ruku'. And no one else apart from Ali ibn Abi Talib could perform this. And because this translator does not follow AhlulBayt alayhim salam, and he cannot put the word wali in its true meaning, which is authority. Ali ibn Abi Talib is not our friend. Allah is not our friend. The Prophet is not our friend, as he has translated here. Allah is at the position of authority. The Prophet is at the position of authority. Ali ibn Abi Talib is also the position of authority. So wali, the meaning of wali is the one with authority. So if I take you back to verse 51 again, it says, "O believers, do not take the Jews and the Christians as those with authority over you." Religious authority, of course. And of course, I'm not prepared to take a Jew or a Christian as a religious authority, are you? I could say that quite happily. They are my friends, they are my colleagues, they are my neighbors. But I'm not going to take a Jew or a Christian, and indeed he won't take me as religious authority. I've spent about 10-15 minutes explaining this. Is it clear to everyone? I don't want to move on before Are you all happy? Are you all very familiar with a small mistake which is a result of not following Ahlul-Bayt alayhi salam and going against the tafsir of Ahlul-Bayt alayhi salam, which in November 2012 leads to a devastating impact, apparently. English translation of the Quran which tells the Muslims, don't take the Jews and the Christians as friends. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. So for those who have in their mind saying, why I keep talking about Ahlul-Bayt, because we want to protect the Muslim Ummah. We don't want the Muslim Ummah to take the Sunnah of the Prophet from other sources, because I can't guarantee the outcome of following another source apart from Ahlul-Bayt. If you're at the basics, then we'll all agree. If you're at the foundation of being good and performing salah and being nice to your parents, we all agree. But if you go more in details, there is no guarantee that you're going to stay on the right path. In fact, I've just shared with you a simple example of not following Ahlul-Bayt alayhi salam in the translation of the Quran, and it will lead you to a deformed Islam, a disfigured Islam, a religion which apparently tells its followers who should preach mercy to mankind, apparently it tells them, don't take the Jews and the Christians as friends. So don't follow anyone other than Ahlul-Bayt alayhi salam. But even the title of Ahlul-Bayt alayhi salam these days has been misrepresented. We do have certain individuals who, under this blessed name of Ahlul-Bayt alayhi salam, this umbrella which represents the true, divinely appointed, perfect, pure inheritors of the Sunnah of the Prophet, we have certain people under this umbrella who you're not supposed to follow. What I'm trying to get into is a warning that lately in England, for some reason, England has been used as a fertile ground for those who carry the banner of AhlulBayt alayhi salam and also present a disfigured image of Islam. This phenomena did not exist a few years ago. We were quite solid and we had clear leadership. But nowadays, our enemies do have agents who are working within our body. The Muslim Ummah, the followers of AhlulBayt alayhi salam. The only hope for Islam to remain as a perfect religion as it came 14 centuries ago. We do have people in London who wear turbans and 24/7 their image of Islam that they present is nothing but cursing and swearing. Anything else? Not really. Cursing, swearing. Okay, you've done it once. Have you got anything else to add? No. Let's just have another program. Let's bring a few historical figures from 14 centuries ago. Okay, what do you want to do with them? Let's just curse them. Use the most, disgusting words to describe them. Okay, so you've done it now for a year. Have you got anything else to tell us? No. Let's do it again. Okay. So what? Are you saying that you admire AhlulBayt more than us? That you have, that you are better at performing bara'ah, dissociation from the enemies of AhlulBayt than us? I've never heard one of our role models, scholars or imams, use the same words as you when you curse and use these filthy words. Are you saying you have more courage than my scholars? My scholars who faced Saddam? My scholars who faced Israel? My scholars who faced the occupation of the land? And you're hiding in the streets of London, trying to flex your muscles and show yourself as a brave man? You've got more courage than my scholars? Where were you? Where were you a couple of years ago? Have you got a vision to come and share with us at the heart of the Muslim Ummah in Iraq or Iran or Kuwait? Or do you just want to hide in London, using it as a fertile ground? Are you trying to show yourself as a better follower to AhlulBayt alayhi salam? I've never heard you support those who fought the Zionists. I've never heard you, support those who wrote about philosophy. In fact, all I heard from you is cursing the companions, cursing the wives of the prophets, cursing all our scholars, one by one. Have you got anything else to offer us? No. So this man who doesn't have anything to offer the people of Iraq is now just, working in London and using it as a fertile ground. He also carries the banner of AhlulBayt, but alhamdulillah, the pure banner of AhlulBayt is far purer than this dark dot to, disturb the purity of it. But you have to be careful, because we are living at a time when the sectarian tension is increasing in the Muslim Ummah. So I have come across Shia Muslims who are so frustrated with the sectarian tension between themselves and their fellow Sunni brothers that they're actually turning out and listening to this guy. I say, why? He said, we know he's wrong, but someone has to say it. Say what? Say what? Oh, Hassen, please don't misunderstand. We know he doesn't represent AhlulBayt. We know this is all wrong, but, have you heard what they say about us? Yes, I have heard what they say about you. About us. Don't you like someone someone who doesn't represent us all just to come out and say something back? No, I don't want that. I don't want that. It doesn't represent me. In fact, he is just, and he's not the only example, by the way. He could be an example of someone who uses, filthy words, inappropriate words, quite disgusting, But there are others who use very soft words. So be careful. Be very, very careful these days, especially you, my fellow brothers and sisters in England, in the Western world. There are people out there who are using the fact that with the expansion of the Muslim Ummah and with the challenges that our Hawza is facing back home, our leadership, the scholars, the institution of the Hawza is unable to maintain contact with you for different reasons. Language barrier, distance, times, culture. There are people who are using this gap between you and the scholars and the maraja to breed within you. They can't do it in Iraq. They can't do it in Iran because the Hawza and the scholars are so strong there. They do it here, where we have less scholars, less clerics. They wear turbans and they come out. Some of them use filthy words, some of them use very kind words. Some of them talk about spirituality, urfan, reaching Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And from underneath they teach their followers, and apparently they do have some followers these days. They're also wearing turbans. That actually, we don't need to follow scholars. Oh really? We've come to this conclusion now. That we don't need to do taqleed. That we could all just float. We could ask anyone about anything and take the answers from them. Okay. Why don't you go and preach this in the housing? I've just come back from Iraq 2 days ago. There is no, state with an iron fist. You could write anything you want. You go to Shara' al-Mutanabbi. Do you know who Mutanabbi is? Mutanabbi? It's a famous poet. Yeah? He's a famous poet, and there's a street in Baghdad named after him, and it's famous in selling books, all kinds of books. Go to that street on a Friday, and you can find any book you like. Pro-religion and anti-religion. In Iraq today. Iraq, which is led by Islamic parties. You could write whatever you want. So these guys, who are in London and in England, they're not writing there where you're supposed to fix the world, you're supposed to fix the housing. They're writing here, and they're preaching here. They want to use this gap between you and the scholars. No taqleed. No clear line of scholars to follow. And if I trace their teachers, I can't go more than one generation, which is quite odd, because in the school of AhlulBayt, we are able to trace every single scholar who taught him, who was the teacher, and who was the teacher of the teacher, and the teacher of the teacher, for hundreds of years. So these guys are just popping up, just popping out of nowhere. Who taught them? We don't know. Why are they preaching something differently? Oh, I know why. I perfectly know why they do it. But obviously there are lots of misconceptions, and they work on misconceptions and nothing else. Enough about misconceptions and wrong and misinterpretations about Islam. Let's talk about the real Islam. The real Islam is about reaching out to non-Muslims, taking the Jews and the Christians as your friends, going out of your way to talk to your fellow Sunni brothers, Sunni Muslim brothers, and the Jews and the Christians and the Hindus around you. Let's talk about what you should do. Okay, what you shouldn't do, we spoke about it. So what should we do? You should use the season of Muharram, which is about to start in a couple of days, to practice a bit of proactivity. Don't wait for people to come and ask you at uni or at school. I repeat, do not wait for people to come and ask you. Go out and reach out to them and talk to them. Find a common topic. Find an opening statement. Find an introduction that would help you to talk to that person. Build the bridges between you and him, and then clarify the misconceptions about Islam. Not only the misconceptions about Islam, but you should be preaching Islam to them, not necessarily in a direct way to say to them, oh, Islam is the perfect religion, why don't you become a Muslim? But you should have something to offer them. As Muslims, you can't expect the world to look at you and say, why your religion is so special? And your answer would be, because it prepares you for the hereafter only. That is indeed part of the answer. And it's a very important part of the answer. Because you're going to live 70 or 80 or 90 years in this life, and you are expected to live for eternity. So whatever prepares you for that long journey and that long stay is obviously worth a lot. Well, that's not the whole answer that you should be giving people. Your answer shouldn't be because Islam is the only thing that guarantees your safety from the hellfire. That shouldn't be the answer. Indeed, that's part of the answer. It's an important part of the answer. But your answer should be, well, we have two lives. We have this life, and death is nothing but a transfer to the other life. So Islam is the best model to follow in this life and in the hereafter. And when you have mentioned to them the world, the best model to be followed for this life, they expect you to come up with examples. What do you mean? What do you mean when you say Islam is the best model? How would you answer it? Two ways. You start by saying, let's look at other models and their failure. And then, now let me tell you about my perfect model. Is it clear? Not many are nodding. Let's recap this. صلوا على محمد وآل محمد. Actually, I'm coming to the end, and I will stop for the Q&A, so we should clarify it in the Q&A. I'll repeat. The real follower of AhlulBayt alayhi salam is a Muslim who has something to offer the world. To offer the world in this life and in the hereafter. When you mention the world, my religion is the best model for this life, people will expect you to come up with answers, with examples. Why do you think your religion is the perfect model? Tell me, please. They may not say it in this way. They may use a gesture of to express interest. Like what? Or really? What does your religion have to say about this? So you need to be prepared to come up with some answers. And I think I'll stop here. In summary, brothers and sisters, before we discuss it in the Q&A, celebrating Mubahila is an important occasion. It was yet another example of the unique status of AhlulBayt alayhim salam. We keep talking about AhlulBayt alayhim salam not because they are history, because there are consequences of not following Ahlul-Bayt alayhim salam today. I spent about 15 minutes sharing with you, and I hope you will all be able to replicate this once you leave Dar. Chapter 5, verse 51 and verse 54. Yes, verse 51 and verse 54. Verse 54 talks about the wali, and those who do not follow Ahlul-Bayt alayhim salam like to interpret wali as friend. That forced them to put the interpretation of verse 51 as friends as well. Hence the mistranslation of the Quran is don't take the Jews and the Christians as friends. It's a mistake. Do not take them as religious authority, and you shouldn't. Beware of those who hide under the banner of Ahlul-Bayt alayhim salam, those who use England as a fertile ground. They use the fact that there is something between you and the Hawza, there is a gap between you and the leadership. Some of them use aggressive approach, some of them use very soft and spiritual approach. Beware. What should you do? You should all be proactive. You should use the season of Muharram. You should go out of your way. You should reach out to your fellow Sunni brothers and to your fellow non-Muslim friends. You should build the bridges with them. You should establish a channel of communication with them first. Once this is established, you have to present Islam to them, clarifying the misconceptions, and there are so many about this religion, and not only being defensive about Islam, but also preaching Islam. Preaching Islam, direct or indirect, has two categories. It is the only thing that will guarantee your safety and happiness for eternity, but also we're talking about the 60, the 40, the 80 years that you will spend in this life. Islam is also the best model for you. Then people will expect you to come up with examples. And I'll stop here and maybe we can discuss the examples. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad. Indeed, it's important to discuss the evidence because unfortunately, another disaster which has resulted from not following the school of Ahlul-Bayt is that some Muslims around us, and indeed it's quite prevalent amongst our Sunni brothers, is this idea that there was no perfect example to follow. I repeat, another major disaster which is just like this misinterpretation of the Quran, which is being printed in millions of copies. We do have now this preaching that actually we've never had perfect models to follow. Because there are no perfect models. Even the Prophet made mistakes. Even the Prophet ﷺ, even he made mistakes. And he made some major mistakes. He cursed, he cursed some people who didn't deserve to be cursed. And he performed the wrong, so he delivered the wrong qada to some people. And he misguided some farmers when they asked him for some guidance about the palm trees and how to cultivate them and so on. So, there are some major mistakes out there. So, it is unique to the school of Ahlul-Bayt salawatullahi wa salamuhu alayhim that we say we've had perfect models, the Prophet, all the Prophets, and indeed the Prophet of Islam sallallahu alayhi and Ahlul-Bayt alayhi salam. And because they were perfect, we should aspire to be perfect in every single aspect. What's the evidence? I'll take a quote from the martyr, the late Ayatollah Sayyid Muhammad Sa'ad al-Sadiq. He wrote in the Encyclopedia of Imam Mahdi the interpretation of a verse in Surah Al-Dhariyat. Surah Al-Dhariyat is chapter 51. Yes. So it's chapter 51, Surah Al-Dhariyat. I think it's verse 56. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, أعوذ بالله من شر الشيطان اللعين الرجيم وَمَا خَلَقْتُ الْجِنَّ وَالْإِنسَ إِلَّا لِيَعْبُدُونَ. I have not created jinn and mankind except to worship me. So Sayyid Muhammad al-Sadr, he says, okay, so clearly it states that the aim of the creation of jinn and mankind is to worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The common understanding, worshipping Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala means to perform salah and hajj and pay khumus, yeah? Rituals. He says, that's a mistake. Since when ibadatullah is purely about rituals, and we're proud of these rituals, by the way, and we practice them and we adhere to them. We adhere to hijab, we adhere to salah, we adhere to hajj, umrah, ziyarah, everything. Well, that's one aspect of Islam. Sayyid Muhammad al-Sadr says, the real interpretation of ibadah is the following, is to direct the individual's thinking and behavior according to the will of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So every single thought, every single concept you believe in, and every single movement, silence you perform or you don't perform should be according to the will of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That is the true meaning of ibadah. Every single fikr wa harakah, fikr wa amal, aqeedah wa suluk, ideology, concepts, thoughts, and actions. Every look you take, every word you say should be according to the will of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And if you apply that second by second, then obviously you're going to have to perform at your best according to the will of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And by the way, since Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the source of perfection, and His will, which guides you every single second, has to be a perfect will. So every single second you're performing something on the path of perfection. Do I have to repeat this? Or is it? It's very simple, by the way. That's very deep. He wrote this in 1972, yet still not very prevalent in the Muslim community. I don't know why. I don't know why we have such great scholars who've written about this 30, 40 years ago, yet we listen to some puppets who studied for 2 months in the house and started to wear a turban and coming out on YouTube cursing and swearing. We leave this, which has been in the books for 40 years, and we hold on this. So the answer of the evidence is, one of the evidences, Sayyid Muhammad al-Sadr's writings about the interpretation of this verse. Allah is the source of perfection. Again, this is unique to Islam and the followers of Ahlul-Bayt. His will has to be the perfect will. You're supposed to follow Him in every single second, at every single second, thoughts and ideas, then you're just on the path of perfection. In summary. Tashahhud in salah, then we don't have any evidence in the heritage of Ahlul-Bayt sallallahu alayhim or the practice of our scholars that followers of Ahlul-Bayt have performed tashahhud, ashhadu anna aliyan waliyullah. Sorry, they have stated this honorable statement that Ali waliyullah, of course he's waliyullah, in tashahhud and salah. We have heritage from the practice of scholars that Ali waliyullah has been mentioned as a statement in adhan and iqamah, and again this is not performed by the imams. So whether you say it or you don't, in adhan or iqamah, it's not haram to say it. It's haram if you take Ashhadu anna Aliyyun waliyullah as part of the iqamah, or if you believe that's part of the adhan. Yeah? It's haram. It makes your adhan and iqamah invalid. Obviously, adhan and iqamah are not part of the salah. They are strongly recommended, mustahabbat. But if you believe that Ashhadu anna Aliyyun waliyullah is part of the adhan, then invalid. If you believe that Ashhadu anna Aliyyun waliyullah is part of the iqamah, invalid. Just like if you believe that as-salatu khayrun min an-nawm is part of adhan al-fajr, also it makes your adhan invalid. So we don't have any evidence from the imams or the practice of the scholars that you should say it in tashahhud. Alhamdulillah, I've managed to clarify that the misinterpretation of the Quran is obviously not there, and Allah does not, say don't take them as friends. Whilst the brother was asking a question, I was looking for the verse that I wanted to tell you about, that I hope will clarify your question. It shows you the purity and the goodness, al-khayr, that is found in this religion. I spend a long time talking about the misconceptions, but let's share with you what the real Islam preaches. Surah Al-Mubahila, chapter 60, verse 8. أعوذ بالله من شر الشيطان اللعين الرجيم. لا ينهاكم الله عن الذين لم يقاتلوكم في الدين ولم يخرجوكم من دياركم أن تبروهم وتقسطوا إليهم إن الله يحب المقسطين. Translation, to the best of my knowledge. Allah does not forbid you from treating justly and most kindly. I repeat, Allah doesn't forbid you from treating justly at the beginning and most kindly those who have neither fought you in religion nor have forced you out of your homes. Inna Allah yuhibbul muqsitin. Allah loves the just ones. So Allah does not forbid you from treating those who have neither fought you in religion nor forced you out of your homes, from treating them not only justly but most kindly. Al-Quran has used the word birr and tabarruhum. Birr is the same word that is in the Islamic heritage is used to describe the relationship between the son and then his parents, the child and his parents. Isa ibn Maryam has a verse in the Quran, says وَبَرًّا بِوَالِدَتِي, most kind to. So the same word that Isa ibn Maryam used to describe the relationship between him and his mother stems from the word birr, is used. Allah doesn't forbid you from performing that. So, if that individual was Christian or a Jew or Hindu, indeed your Sunni Muslim brothers should be closer to you because you're their fellow Muslims. But the other followers of religions, and indeed the atheists who do not believe in religion and who have in their mind that the people of religion are backwards or not up to speed and so on, they haven't fought you in religion, they haven't drove you out of your homes, have they? Doesn't forbid you from treating them justly and most kindly. And indeed, that friend of yours, in my opinion, who says that the people of religion are backwards and are just behind, and in fact religion is a disease, I can't imagine him being worse than that man who 14 centuries ago was walking in the streets of Medina. And in the opposite direction came a noble man, Al-Imam Ja'far ibn Muhammad al-Sadiq, sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. This man, this traveler, was originally from Sham, modern Syria, modern day Syria. He was a victim of the propaganda of Muawiyah and the Umayyad dynasty against AhlulBayt alayhi salam. That AhlulBayt alayhi salam are backwards, they are the enemies of the religion, they have misinterpreted Islam for generations. So he's just faced the representative of AhlulBayt alayhi salam at the time. So what did he do? Wal-'iyadhu billah, he cursed the Imam, face to face. I can't imagine that friend of yours being worse than that person. How did the Imam treat him? You all know the story, I hope. He said to him, "You look like you're a stranger. You're not from this town. If you need anything, come to us. We'll help you." And the next day, this man walked into the mosque of the Prophet when Imam Ja'far al-Sadiq was praying, and he pointed and said, Allah indeed knows where to put his message. This is real Islam. This is the man I curse, and he turns to me and says, "You look like a stranger, you need some help." So they're all victims of propaganda. Today's world, modern atheists have dominated the academic institution and the media. And indeed, there's continuous brainwashing and misguidance about the role of religion and the concept of the existence of God. And the Muslim community isn't doing its job in preaching Islam and counteracting the misconceptions. We're not making YouTube clips to answer the atheist, are we? Are we? We're not holding open events at university to clarify the misconceptions that the atheists are talking about, which have been discussed in the Hawza for hundreds of years. None of what they say is new. We all have the answers, but we're not proactive about it. We're not reaching out to these our brothers and sisters or fellow friends who are under this influence. We should open up. This blessed Dar should have programs for the followers of AhlulBayt, for the Muslims. But it should also be an open hub in which you invite non-Muslims to it. You should. You seriously should. You should have events in which every single one of you, brothers and sisters, you bring 3 of your non-Muslim friends. Just 3. Just 3. And you have 150 people in this room. Just 3. Bring them, have a 20 minutes presentation. Once every month. You can do it. Unless you don't have any Jews or Christians as your friends and you've been following their mispresented Islam, but I hope I've clarified that. You can do it. So please do it. So you have your personal interaction with them and you have the law. Your personal interaction should be exactly as Imam Ja'far al-Sadiq is. Those who swear at you, who curse you, you smile and say, "Brother, I think you've been brainwashed. Do you need a hand? I think you're angry. Do you need me to help you? What's bothering you? Why are you so frustrated? Just calm down, let's talk about it. If you need help, we can help you. If there's something down there inside you which is burning and causing you to burst in front of me and start cursing the Shia and the Shia this and Shia this and that, then you must be angry about something. Let's talk about it. And if you're not convinced, then by all means we could talk about it later. But if someone is aggressive physically against you, if someone takes your leaflets and throws them out, if someone tears your posters, then you go to university and follow the law. Don't take punches that are beyond a person who is just has an opinion and wants to voice it out. If he has an opinion and wants to voice it out, talk to her. Keep talking. Clarify it. Show the real merit of Ahlul Bayt alayhi salam. But if someone's going to tear posters, if someone's going to, try and be aggressive against you physically, don't take it. Don't. Call the police. Speak to the university. And I'm being very serious about it. I don't want you to feel weak. I want you to feel confident. I want you to know that you have an honorable heritage from Ahlul Bayt alayhi salam that will empower you to be able to deal with, the most aggressive of people. But if someone wants to use violence against you, no. You shouldn't be weak. So, build bridges. Don't wait for Ashura Awareness Week. You've got about 10 days. So in these 10 days, start your marketing. And I'm using the word marketing, I know it may not be very appropriate. But you know what's coming. You've been through it, we've been through it, you know what's going to happen. So from now, just divide. How many of you university? 7? Each take 7 people. 7 people who you know might be influenced by others or might be influential. And talk to them. Tell them that we're going to do this, this and that. We're going to have leaflets. We're going to bring someone to talk. This is our message. This is what we want to achieve. Don't believe anything else to be said about us. So we always, just like when we talk about Imam al-Hussein, as if his mission was on the 9th and the 10th of Muharram. We don't talk about his mission that started with the death of Muawiyah. We ignore the couple of months that he had of preaching and da'wah and planning. We just talk about him in the last 48 hours. We also deal with it when we are in the store. You know what's coming. Plan. Highlight who are the influential people at university, who might be affected by it. Reach out to them, build bridges, clarify misconception. That will minimize the damage that you might expect to happen on the day that you have a program at university. So don't wait for the problems, don't wait for them to happen. My answer is, I believe the statements he's trying to make is very general, because not every single war that humanity has fought in, people fought in, were led by corrupt politicians. We do have, wars which started in defense. And indeed, those who fight in wars to defend the innocent women, children, and men deserve to be glorified. And if the popular appeal is about glorifying British soldiers who defended their land against the enemy who started first, then why shouldn't you glorify someone who's defending his land? Now, of course, Tony Blair led us to think that in 2003 he's leading a war to look for weapons of mass destruction. And he was a liar. There were no weapons of mass destruction. He twisted the arms of MPs, and he led the country into an illegal and ethical war, which he should bear the consequences, the ethical consequences of all of it. But the soldiers who fought to protect their lands against the enemies in the 20th century, why shouldn't we glorify them? The soldiers who defended their lands against any invasion, why shouldn't you glorify them? To generalize, of course, war is an ugly thing. No one wants to fight in a war. No one wants to see any country, any nation goes into war. War is destruction, killing, non-productive apart from protection, I hope, and defense on the honorable side. So no one likes it, but to take this passive approach that we are anti-violence, everything that happens with violence and weapons these days is just wrong and we should all step aside and just attack both sides, it's just wrong. That's just being not practical and not not just practical because you want to fight, that's actually being quite ignorant about the women and the children who are being victims of the oppressors. Those who are stepping on your land and bombing and killing and kidnapping. What are you going to do? You're going to just say, oh, war is ugly and our politicians are corrupt? Well, maybe your politicians are corrupt. If someone's invading your land, it's time to stand up and defend it. So my position is, if there's a war to defend the land, then you should glorify these soldiers, because they have really, paid the price that a lot of people are afraid to pay, and they're trying to avoid it. Same thing happened in Iraq. Same thing happens everywhere. You can't do it, you see others do it, and then you start attacking those who've done something that has morally forced you to look as an underachiever. That's my. I'm not obviously addressing the brother or the individual who did that, because I haven't actually read his work or his comments, but generally, anyone who defends his land deserves to be glorified. Alhamdulillah, our scholars have written about this extensively. If you're talking about meat, then the meat you're eating should be meat which has come from an animal which has been slaughtered in the Islamic way. So any animal not slaughtered in the Islamic way is a meater, and so you can't eat it. Full stop. Anything else from the people of the book is halal, of course it's halal. Most of our scholars even consider the idea of spiritual impurity. The najasa is not applicable to the people of the book, so the people of the book are actually tahireen, and hence you can eat from their hands, even with a wet medium between them and the food. As for the people not from the people of the book, then no, then there is the issue of spiritual impurity, and if you can establish that there has been a wet medium between the food and the individual, then you're not allowed to eat it on the basis of najasa. But it's an issue which has been discussed in the books of fiqh extensively before. I've always thought of shakar as a good translation, but obviously not from reading the verse. So let's just leave you with this concept, that doctors, medical doctors, are in a way forced to learn English, whether they are Japanese, whether they are Russian, whether they are from Brazil. Because the modern language of medicine today is English. So why should all these doctors put up with the English language, even though they are Russian, Japanese, and Chinese? Because it's a medium to get the knowledge. This holy book, its language is Arabic. So if you want to get the real meanings of the book, do as the doctors do, learn Arabic. There is no perfect English translation out there, because the English translation is not a Quran. Quran is the Arabic text. The English translation is not a Quran. It's an English tafsir. It's an English explanation. It's an explanation of the words in English. Yeah? So there is no perfect. Shakir is very good, and I'm sure other translators have done a remarkable job in translating the Quran, but nothing is perfect, and indeed, chapter 5, Surah Al-Ma'idah highlights a big issue with the copy that's available now. So don't take anything for granted. Read it. May Allah be pleased with those who worked so hard to come up with this translation, but learn the Arabic. And I'm sure the people of the Dar will help you with some Arabic circles to... you all should do it. I was a medical student at George's a couple of years ago, and I remember a fellow brother who converted to Islam when he was a third-year medical student, coming from non-Arabic background. And within a year and a half, when he was in his final year, he was teaching Arabic. I repeat, he became a Muslim. In the 3rd year, by 5th year he was teaching Arabic. So I know your parents will say it's very difficult, it's nahu and balagha and sarf and marfu' and mansoob and majroor. But it's possible. If you want to do it, if you want to spend a year and a half or maybe less getting a passport that will allow you to clarify so many misconceptions about Islam, then do it. You have the Dar, you have the respected community, you have your respected elders who will help you. Use them before it's too late. Some of you might be asking yourselves, even though you haven't actually asked the question which I wanted you to ask, but obviously you are too shy or you just got caught with the translation of the Quran. The issue of providing solutions. I said your fellow non-Muslim friends, brothers and sisters will ask you, give us examples. So now I'm going to ask you, which is a habit I've developed over the years. When the audience doesn't ask me, I start asking the audience. If I ask you now as a non-Muslim, you're saying that your religion has the best answers for me in this life. Could you give me examples, please? What would you say? What would you say?
So I would try and give like, not case studies, but like a specific example and elaborate on that. So one of the examples I like to give is about the equality.
By the way, I'm not going to repeat, so please all pay attention to the brother.
So one of the examples I like to give is about the equality of men and women, and that specifically in Islam. The roles of men and women in the house.
Yes.
And that how in Islam it says that the role of the husband, the man, it is to provide for the family, and that all the money he earns, it is for the family to spend, and that everyone in the family has an equal right to say how that money should be spent. And that the role of the wife is to help bring up the children and help to keep the household as a halal place. But she's also allowed, after her responsibilities are met, she's allowed, she can do whatever she wants. If she wants to go into work, she can. And that any income she earns, it is for her, for herself and for her alone. No one else in the family has a right to ask her for that money. And here's like a religion started 1,500 years ago, earlier. It's giving monetary wealth, it's allowing women to own wealth.
Yes.
And no other religion, women weren't even allowed to be educated.
If I may ask you and say, how would you compare this model, or this aspect of the model, to an average, hard-working woman in Leeds today? What would you say? Why would you say that Islam is better for you? Why? What's she doing nowadays that doesn't fit with what you've said?
Nowadays, that when she earns any money, the husband has the right to say, oh, well, I need some money, or we have to share it and we have to pool the money together.
Okay. And why is this a bad thing?
It's not. The point...
Is it not?
No. So my personal belief is that that rule was set in place so that in a relationship which is not fully working properly, that the woman is legally protected and that the husband cannot force her to give up her money. But in real life, in real practice, inshallah, this would never be the case. Money goes...
I would say, inshallah, it should be the case. Thanks for bringing up the point. Who could follow up on this point, especially the sisters? What would you say to a hard-working woman in Leeds? Why is the... I'm looking this way now. Why is the model in Islam is better for her? Is the question clear?
Most women are expected to share the household expenses. They have to divide, they pay half the bills, they pay half the rent, they pay half of everything, if they have the income to do that.
So, okay, I think I'm not making myself clear. So the current situation is, in Leeds, 21st century, a man works, life is too expensive, what does the woman have to do? She has to work. And after she works, what does she have to do? What does she have to do? She has to contribute. And what does Islam say? Islam says she doesn't have to contribute. It's her money. So just take a zoom out at society. I want you to come up with the answer. I don't want to tell you the answer. Why is the Islamic model better?
Just from the children's point of view, that if the woman feels that she has to...
Just raise your voice. So.
From the children's perspective, like if the child has a mother that feels she has to contribute in terms of finances to the family, that means that she would be forced to work, and therefore she would be neglecting her children more. Nations are built upon the mothers who raise the children, raise the nation. Therefore, if the mother is neglecting the children, you have a better society.
Did everyone hear the issue about the pressure on children? Not everyone is agreeing.
So could you just repeat that? I didn't quite.
Higher.
Okay, so let me just repeat this. So we are saying that why is this model better, for example? You need to think about this, by the way. You need to really think about it, look at what's happening in society around you, and present your model. So we are saying, if the woman has to work, and then after she has to work, she has to contribute, then we are applying an extra pressure on the individual, on the one of the pair who is most responsible for bringing up the children, yes? And we're saying, because of this pressure, this is compromising her ability to bring up the children. Yeah? Who agrees with this? The sisters are shaking their heads, but the brothers are not.
This is where you're not okay.
I also agree with that.
Okay? Anyone has anything to say about this? I'm going to make this interactive.
Well, can I come in?
Okay, go on, Mark.
I think the issue of has to contribute and has to work, I think it stems before this, because what's happened, this is my own opinion, is that women want a certain lifestyle, and they want a certain house, and they want a certain car, and they want a certain way of life. Now, if it is going to be the man who contributes solely, and if a woman chooses to work or not to work, it's up to her. But if you were going to go, let's say for example you wanted to buy a house and it cost X amount of money, and you couldn't do it on your own as a man, but the woman wanted to say that I'll work, I earn a certain amount of money, and I'll contribute towards it. What happens 5 years down the line if the woman doesn't want to work anymore and has to pull back and it puts the man in a difficult situation? There's forward planning, and what I think comes in with Eamon's point is that if it becomes that case, then what happens is that you both have to compromise. The man might have to start looking after the children, the woman has to work a bit more, or vice versa, and it becomes a bit messed up. I think that this is what this society I think is doing to us, because we all want this kind of lifestyle and this kind of house, which this society tells us we need to do, but we don't think the few steps beforehand. So this model of the woman's is what's mine is mine, what yours is mine, is a pure model, but it gets affected when other things to do with materialism come involved, and there's no forward planning.
Okay. Thanks for sharing the plan. Did one of the sisters have something to say to us?
If we actually go back to the point where society gives women, like current society gives women the right to work, but you're saying that
current society gives the woman the right to work or forces women to work?
Yeah, that's the point. It promotes that we want equal share, give women, females the right to work, and as much as the man. But in reality, they're just forcing her to work.
Okay, so we agree.
To her husband, like to share and contribute to the family.
Yeah, but they're forcing it because the lifestyles become too expensive for one person to sustain.
Marla, can I just say something? You're all jumping into the family. How many of you know girls who are not yet in a family and they are forced to work?
They're expected to work.
Aha. So, a girl reaches the age of 18, she's not in a family, she's still with her parents. Is she expected to work nowadays? Yeah? She has to work. She has to work. You all kind of jumped into the family, and which is right. I think you're all thinking of the family circle, which needs planning and who's going to look after the children. I'm talking about teenagers. I'm talking about girls who are 16, 17, 18, who their parents today are forcing them to work. Because there's no obligation in the current model in England, there's no obligation on the father to provide for the daughter. Because she has to work. And this idea of forcing a teenager to work, for me, is not very healthy. Because I'm forcing this young girl, with the little or the wealth of experience that she's got, out in society. I'm throwing her into the deep end. And we're still living in a society where if you're not dressed in a particular way, and if you're, especially for women, for certain jobs, if you're not within certain dimensions, certain expectations, you can't get the job. And if things get desperate, and if you're in a recession, then what do you have to do? You have to compromise to fit in within this expectation in order for you to feed yourself. And that's not very good for women. If women has to work to feed themselves as teenagers, before they even become members of a family or partners, that's not very healthy. Do you all follow the consequences of what I'm going with this?
Can I make it two-way? I agree with what you're saying, but I think, and it's about this society we're living in,
yes.
It doesn't allow you to have this sheltered, secluded life where you don't work. Because what will happen is, just like you just said, you'll get to the, eventually you will, if you go to university or then you start getting a job, even if it's just for leisure, you know, if you don't have to earn, but you want to work because you don't want to stay in home all day, this society now will swallow you alive. If you haven't got any experience, if you don't know what you're doing, and you're sheltered because you've not worked, you don't have any experience in dealing with finance, X, Y, Z, you're going to struggle in this society to actually get by. And you'll fall back on, who will you fall back on? Your husband, your father? So I think it's a problem. I'm not sure where you're going because I don't know what the solution is. Because if the solution is then to stick to the letter, which is then, you know, for the not to expect the women to work and not to do X, Y, and Z. But we're still living in this country. But you're saying that about conforming. I don't think it's about conforming. I think it's about actually getting on and actually surviving in the society. And just like you said in the recession, the people who are weak and don't know and haven't got any experience in working and in earning finances, in managing affairs, will be the first people not to get the job.
What's the... No, just to clarify that we're talking purely about survival here. And I think the children in this society need more than survival. If we don't have enough women to go out there, bring up children, or volunteer in our schools to teach these innocent children, you know, that purity, that love, that passion, that compassion, then we will live. We will force to each seek, you know, some financial support. But what if these women are not expected to work, and they live on the minimum, and they're happy with this, and they devote their time to bring up this, you know, this expanding population of children who have no one to talk to them? And I think they will live on the basics, but they will bring up a better generation. So it is a problem because of the model. And where is it going to? Yes, of course, you know, the society isn't able to just tomorrow take the model that we are preaching, but still, that's exactly why we are saying Islam is a better model. So, is it clear why it's a better model? Is it clear why women, for example, in the Middle East, who still live on the basics, are still able to offer, you know, even though they're poor, even though they are, you know, still living under the wing of their older brother, or their uncle, maybe if she's an orphan, or their father, or their husband, or whatever, whoever that person is. They're still able to work if they want to work, seek education if they want to seek education, and not necessarily forcing people to work with that education. If you don't want to work, if you want to seek knowledge and then use that knowledge just purely to teach, to volunteer, this society doesn't accept this. Because you have to go out there and fetch for yourself, or you shouldn't. So this is just one example that the brother kindly brought to us when I said, if you want to present Islam as a perfect model, what sort of examples are you going to come up with? Simple concepts, women's rights in Islam, and we've spent about 20 minutes now discussing, and I have to say that we have more than this to offer this society, this idea of a better model. But it seems clear to me that not everyone in this blessed gathering is up to speed with how to present Islam as a better model. I think the Wednesday circles and the Friday circles should be an opportunity for you to develop this. Choose an aspect of Islam, a certain form of guidance of Islam, think about it, understand it, and then compare it to Leeds, to England, to what's happening nowadays. And the examples are many. Women's rights, how to choose your spouse, how to bring up your children, how to treat your neighbours. I expect you to come up with this as a first example, because how many of you know your third door neighbour? Seven people amongst maybe about 40 people here know their third door neighbour. What does Islam say about neighbours? Sorry? 40, yeah? So reach out, 7 each direction. Why? And you can tell me why later on, you can tell between yourselves, yeah? How do you choose your spouse? Nowadays, not only you have to go out with that girl, society has reached such... Talking about, how may I word this appropriately? Sorry?
It's being recorded as well.
Yeah, I want you to. So not only one, you should know the person, but you should have physical matching with the person. Oh, really? Physical matching as well. You want to go there? I thought this society preaches women as, you know, for their personalities. Not only for their looks and their colour of their hair, now we're talking about physical matching. Do you all appreciate how women are being treated here and how they are being kind of put in an equation to be chosen as partners? Compare to this to Islam, what Islam preaches about women and how you should choose your spouse and so on. So think about all these examples. Think of what Islam preaches, think of what the current practice is, and try and understand why Islam is a better model. Practice wording it and talking about it. Then, after you've built bridges, talk to your non-Muslim friends about it. Indeed, we have to implement it. I don't think we should wait for the Middle East to do it. Of course, we have to put positive pressure on our leadership, on our scholars to give us more of this knowledge. If the community in Leeds will get together and, you know, the Imam Hussein blood donation campaign, which you participated in last year, becomes a phenomenon in the Muslim community in Leeds, then that's implementation of part of the book. And I'm not going to wait for Iraq or Iran to show me the better image of Islam. The sisters in their hijab and the brothers will come out and say to their non-Muslim friends, come. Only 5% of the population. I work in the field of hematology, so I know very well what blood donation is all about. Come, my non-Muslim friend. This is Imam Hussein blood donation campaign. This is Islam motivating us to get you all, Muslims and non-Muslims, we are leading the way, to come and donate blood, because only 5% of the population of the UK donate blood, and we need more. So we should implement it. We should implement it here in Leeds. This community should come out with the, with the practical applications of what Islam aspires you to do. Your family units should be the role models. No need to wait for Iraq and Iran and Bahrain to do it. You do it here. Your children, your family units, your neighborhoods will be the implementation of Islam. What does Islam say about your relationship with the neighbors? You implement it. What does Islam say about how we treat women? You implement it. They will turn and say, well, what about what's happening in Iraq and Pakistan and Afghanistan? Well, this is religion for the whole of mankind, and you don't need to wait for Iraq and Pakistan to be the implementation. None of the people in Iraq and Pakistan say that they're Muslim, their societies are Islamic societies. So, of course, we want to apply positive pressures on our scholars. Of course, these societies out there, they are not perfect Islamic societies, and they say that themselves, but we could implement it here. We could implement part of it here. And we're not very weak, by the way. We do have some positive points. And if you don't believe me, take your family, take 2 or 3 families, and visit your fellow non-Muslim neighbors. Sit with them, and get to know the way the family dynamics work. And then you will see that you have a lot to offer in November 2012. No need to wait for Iraq and Pakistan. Here, what you already have. And I know the problems in this community, I know it very well. I know the challenges, and I know that we're not perfect. But what you have is already a blessing. So share it, please. Go out there and share the blessings that Islam has left you with. In Leeds,